What if Captain Carter fought the Hydra Stomper? Hello everyone and welcome to All Things Watched. In this video we are going to talk about episode 5 of season 2 of the brand new multiversal animated series from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, What If? And so we're not going to waste any time. We're just going to go right ahead and jump into the episode and jump into the breakdown and all that good stuff. And this episode opens with, of course, a scene right from the original Avengers movies, but this time the lineup is a little bit different. In this reality, in this universe, the Avengers team that has assembled is Hawkeye, Thor, Captain Britain or Captain Carter, Iron Man, the Wasp, and Black Widow. And of course we as the story continues, we get some really cool fight scenes which are very reminiscent to the Avengers, to the original Avengers movie. Of course, this time rather than Cap pushing up Natasha Romanoff, now you have Captain Carter, but it's still the same scene. She pushes Romanoff up to grab one of those Chitauri speeders, basically so that they can make their way to Loki. However, in this universe, after Captain Carter pushes Black Widow up to the speeder, she herself also jumps onto a speeder, and they both end up going to confront Loki. So it was really cool to see this reimagined in a different universe. I also really like seeing this universe's version of the Avengers. It was really cool, and it seems like there's a couple of characters that have been sort of popping in and out throughout this entire series. Of course, Captain Carter is one of them. She's been in a couple episodes now. Thor has been in a few episodes now. Odin, I think, was in a couple of episodes as well, which are in the future because I'm a little bit behind with these reviews, but Odin is in the next 2 episodes, and so it seemed very interesting that they're really sticking to a couple of these different characters. But it was so cool to see Loki, especially now that we know in up to date in the MCU that we have been following. Loki is now basically the sort of the keeper of the multiverse, which we'll get into a second. So right after we get this scene, then of course we get the actual opening sequence. And then the very next scene is the Watcher. Now this was when I started to get very interested in the episode, because in season 1, if you can remember going back, whenever we seen the Watcher and we seen his perception of the multiverse, as you can see, he sees things outside of time, outside of reality. So he actually sees the multiverse just like this. He's able to see all the different universes. To him, he can maneuver in and out of different worlds, and he's able to see all these different stories, which is how we are able to see it, because we are actually seeing it through him. And so I really liked that part of the first episode. But what I found very interesting is that as this sequence progresses, as you can see here, the Watcher, now we get like a zoomed out image, and he's basically, and also I think it's worth mentioning that he's actually explaining here that this version of Captain Carter that we are seeing is actually the exact same version. This is the same Captain Carter from season 1 who was on this multiversal Avengers team. This is the same Captain Carter that we've seen in Gamora's episode, really in Iron Man's episode, What If Iron Man Crashed into the Grand Master? Because that was an origin story of Gamora and how she got onto the multiversal team. Well, he explains here that after he allowed that multiversal Avengers team in the finale of season 1, when he brought them back to their timelines, well, this is now that version of Captain Carter continuing on. But the reason why I took it still here is because I wanted to show you, if you pay attention to the image, the lower right half of the image is very much green. It's very green, whereas the upper left part of the image is blue. And we know that most of season 1, whenever we seen the Watchman and whenever we seen his perception of the multiverse, it was oftentimes like a prism. It was different colors, but it oftentimes really focused on blue. And sometimes a little bit of red as well. But the fact that we have the green here, and now we'll go to the next image, and you can see the Watcher side on. You can see him looking at the story while he's explaining the story and telling the story. But the important thing is that everything is turning green. And I wonder that if this is not Loki now taking over the universe, taking over the multiverse, and going up on that throne where Kang the Conqueror was, or He Who Remains, really, which was a variant of Kang. And I wonder if this is not now happening in sequence to season 2 of Loki. I wonder if this episode is now syncing up with the episode from Loki, because we don't really see the Watcher outside of time in the next 2 episodes. It really just dives into the episodes. So this is, I'm pretty sure this is the first time we've actually seen the Watcher from his perspective, and seeing the multiverse from his perspective. Excuse me. So I really liked how it starts off in, very much like the way it was, but now everything is turning green, which makes me think that this is probably happening or corresponding around the same time as the events of Loki Season 2. Sorry, folks, I had to get a drink there for a second. And so, but anyways, once he explains that this is the same Captain Carter, we then go ahead and jump right into the story, continuing with Captain Carter. And essentially what I think the best way to describe this episode is that this episode is a combination of the Winter Soldier and, of course, Black Widow, the movie Black Widow. And I'm pretty sure they actually joke about that in this episode. I think they actually made a comment about how there was a Black Widow movie or something like that. But as you can see in this image, this is Peggy pulling up in the car, and she's basically telling Natasha to get in or whatever. They have a mission and whatnot. Now, in the Winter Soldier, this was actually Natasha. It was actually Black Widow driving the vehicle, and she pulls up and gets Steve Rogers. But in this universe, Peggy's driving, and she gets Natasha. And of course, just like in the movie, we see the boat, and they never actually showed the sequence of them going onto the boat, so you don't actually see Captain Carter jumping out of a helicopter without a parachute or anything like that. You just see the boat, and then they end up going down on the boat, and of course when they get down there, they end up discovering that the person that they're going to be fighting against is actually the Hydra Stomper. And if you can remember back to Season 1, you learned that inside of that Hydra Stomper was actually Steve Rogers, and so a really big fight breaks out. And as you can see, they're looking up. They're a little afraid for their lives. And here you get a really good image of the Hydra Stomper. This is actually Captain America. And he opens fire and releases a whole bunch of missiles and whatnot at the boat, and literally explodes the boat. And so Captain Carter and Black Widow, they're able to escape, but they barely escape, and they really do. He really does a lot of damage here, destroying the boat, and I think is more so emotionally hurtful for Peggy as opposed to physically. She can take a beating. She's not weak. She's used to being in fights and all that kind of stuff. She fought in the war. Even in this version, she fought in the war, and it was her that ended up with the super soldier serum and whatnot. But still, the biggest struggle that she has in this episode is not so much the physical battle, but it's much more of the the emotional side of things. So anyways, they end up escaping by jumping into the water, and of course Rogers, or the Hydra Stomper, which we'll just call him Steve because that's essentially who it is, Rogers ends up flying away, and they are able to escape. In the meantime, once they get back to the base, Peggy goes up and talks to Nick Fury. Once again, very reminiscent to what happens in The Winter Soldier, except rather than Steve being here and questioning Fury and questioning his allegiance and all that kind of stuff, this time it's Peggy. She's asking him, hey, did you know that this was Rogers? Did you know Steve was, still alive? Did you know that it was him inside of the Hydra Stomper? And all this kind of stuff, which is really just sort of continuing that story from the first season. Not just Peggy's story, but also Steve's story of him, going into that Hydra Stomper. Because if you can remember in the very first episode of Season 1, when she got the super serum, that's also when he sort of became a part of that suit, that mechanical, almost Iron Man, Ironmonger type suit. And so this is continuing not only her story, but also his story, Steve Rogers' story. But it was really cool to see Nick Fury here. And of course, Samuel L. Jackson did voice Nick Fury, just the same as Haley Atwell did voice Peggy Carter. It was unfortunate that that Scarlett Johansson did not voice Natasha Romanoff or Black Widow, but it's okay because she was voiced by Lake Bell, and Lake Bell did a really good job. Really sounded a lot like her, really kept that charisma and that character of Scarlett Johansson. It would have been cool to actually have Johansson return, but in the real world, there was a little bit of dispute between Johansson and Disney and whatnot. They had that legal battle and all that kind of stuff. So whatever, it is what it is. But either way, as much as it would have been nice to see Scarlett Johansson come back for the voice, Lake Bell did a really good job as well. So it's just a really cool little setting. So while she's here attacking Nick Fury, of course, Steve ends up coming and attacking, which I thought was really cool. First of all, I gotta say, that this entire episode had probably some of the best action sequences. I shouldn't say the best, because every episode seems to have that moment with the action sequences for the most part. The action in this series is really not holding back, they're really giving it all. But the action looks really good. The choreography looks really good. This episode specifically gives you a lot of hand-to-hand combat more towards the end of it, especially with Black Widow, when she's fighting another character who ends up cameoing, which we'll get into. But anyway, Steve Rogers ends up, coming in full charge, shooting and whatnot, and then of course Peggy is able to get on top of him. I'm sorry that some of these images look a little bit blurry, but I struggle getting screenshots that are really high def or clear when there's movement. I know, I'm just not able to get shots that are all that great, but this will have to do. But anyways, Peggy gets on top of the robot, or on top of the Ironmonger suit, and she just starts beating the crap out of him. And they have a lot of really cool scenes that are very reminiscent to the Winter Soldier as well. In the Winter Soldier, they Rogers ends up running through a bunch of walls, whereas this one, Rogers ends up flying up through the ceiling and up through a bunch of different floors while Peggy is fighting. And eventually the battle ends up going outside, and she's able to actually disarm the suit by basically knocking him out. I think that's really what happens, is she knocks him out, which means that if he's, disabled, then that means the suit's disabled as well, because you also learn in this episode that him and this suit are basically in sort of like this symbiotic relationship now. The suit needs him, and he needs the suit in order to survive. Like, he's not able to go outside the suit. I'm pretty sure that's what it said. The suit helped preserve him. That's why he's able to live such a long time without having any super soldier serum and all that kind of stuff. Remember, this is a what if episode, so it's not really meant to be realistic. It's more of, you're literally telling a story, well, what if this could happen type thing. And so I took a screenshot of this, because this is when Peggy is trying to, basically save Steve, and they're both free falling. And so Natasha is driving the helicarrier, and she's able to slow down the helicarrier as they are falling, so that they can fall right into the back of it. And the reason why I screenshotted that was because this is literally basically scene for scene from Avengers 2: Age of Ultron. And as you can see here, this is actually a shot from Age of Ultron, where this time it's Natasha trying to go into the back of the spaceship, whereas in the What If episode, Natasha's driving. Well, here in the Age of Ultron, it was actually Hawkeye that was driving, and she actually has a hold to Vision. This is after Ultron created Vision, and as you can see, she's free falling from the back of the truck into the back of the helicarrier, just like what Peggy's doing, and you get almost the exact same scene. This is Black Widow in Avengers: Age of Ultron, which is literally almost scene for scene from what we've seen with Peggy trying to come in, but this time Peggy is with Steve Rogers, and not with Vision or anything created by Ultron. So anyways, continuing then with the story, they end up going to a secluded area. Black Widow knows of this area, which is basically off the record. S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't know about them. I guess the government doesn't know. It's probably something like a black site, except nobody knows about it. Like, it's like I guess you could say like a zero site, or a really black site, a really dark site. And so they end up going here just for the sake of, well, for a few reasons. One, they just want to sort of rest up. They've been sort of fighting all day and being attacked all day, and so they finally have Steve Rogers sedated or knocked out and whatnot. And this is actually where Natasha tells Captain Carter that they're not able to actually take him out of the suit, because he needs the suit in order to survive. He's fully 100% relying on this suit and on this equipment, so they're never going to be able to actually take him out of the suit. He needs it in order to survive. And so this is a little bit of I guess a little bit of information, a tidbit of information, just to understand how Rogers was able to survive, from all the way back in World War. I guess his suit, I don't really understand the time part of it. I don't know how the suit was really able to stop him from de-aging, but maybe the suit was able to put him into a sleep, almost like the Winter Soldier, how they sort of kept sedating him and freezing him into this sort of, cardiac freeze, I guess, so to speak, where they actually are able to freeze you to the point where your life be put on pause. So I'm assuming that the suit is able to do that here with Steve Rogers as well, and so that's how he survived all this time. And so eventually he does wake up, and the three of them decide to work together now. and they're in this really strange town. I'm not even really 100% sure why or how they were here, because I don't recall seeing all this stuff when they actually went to this other place, when they went to that place in the spaceship. So I'm thinking that I might have gotten a little mixed up or something. But anyways, they end up at this location, and there's all these robots there, and it seemed to me, it was actually reminded me a lot of the location that we've seen in the very, like, if you can remember all the way back to 2003, the Hulk movie. That's sort of where they end up bringing the Hulk, sort of like to this nuclear testing place, so to speak. And in this world, well, that's sort of where they're hanging out as well, at this nuclear testing site with all these like mannequins, which are supposed to represent people. And I think the idea is that they would see the effects of the explosion, what the effects would have, you know, if there was people and whatnot there. Like I said, it's a testing location, and so these guys are all here, and we get a really cool visual shot here of Peggy and Steve, and he's still in his suit. But I wanted to take the screenshot from this angle because it shows how beautiful the sunset is and just how nice the animation is. It's a very high quality anime, and it looks really well. And Marvel has really, you know, I've said it in pretty well every review so far, that Marvel really has not cheaped out, or you know, they really didn't hold back with this animation. And so we get a really nice moment here where they are pretty well about to kiss. Literally, they almost kiss, their lips almost touch. And of course, these crazy mannequin things ends up attacking, and it was actually very creepy. It's a very weird, very creepy vibe, because these things, you know, they look so real even though, you know, they're not real. But their hands actually open up, and they have what I think are a bunch of stun guns. So it seems like they're stunners. They won't actually get hurt, it won't actually kill them, but it will stun them. And so they end up, of course, attacking, and then they end up in another really big fight. And so we get some really cool sequences here, especially with Peggy Carter. You see Peggy, she's actually sort of surfing or riding along on Steve Rogers' back because he's inside of this suit, and they're just plowing through all these, you know, sort of all these mannequins and all these dummies, which are, you know, equipped with these stun guns, and they're just ripping right through them. It was a really cool sequence seeing that and whatnot. And then, of course, the real villain is revealed, and it is revealed that it is actually Melena. And we know that Melena, of course, is Natasha's excuse me, we know that Melena is actually Natasha's sister, and that they've both been trained, and she's also known as the White Widow. So if Natasha was known as Black Widow, Melena would be known as the White Widow. And so that's sort of like the big reveal here. You know, they reveal that the White Widow here is really the one in charge, and she has the other widows with her, the Black Widows, because remember, if you can remember from the actual movie Black Widow, the Black Widow was actually a program. It was a widow program, and they were actually sterilized. They had to have surgery where they weren't able to reproduce or have children. It's just a way of, you know, because I'm guessing that the widow program was sort of, you know, if someone was able to have a child, then that would be a connection, and that connection could become a compromise. And so the idea was that they would sterilize these widows just so that they would not, you know, be compromised in the future, so that they wouldn't have something to fight for other than, you know, whatever the mission was. Because ultimately, you know, most parents are going to fight for their children no matter what. So, you know, I think that this was just a way of, you know, making them being able, you know, making the widow program so successful. In order to control the widows, you had to sort of eliminate any possible compromises, and that's what they did. So in the Black Widow movie, and that's sort of how this sort of ties in now with the Black Widow movie. If you can remember, I said this episode was like a combination between the Winter Soldier and Black Widow, and this is how, because now you have Melena in here, and you had the White Widow in here. Actually, this was Melena, so this actually might have been, now that I'm thinking about it, this was actually, I think, Natasha's mother and not her sister. Yeah, I think this is actually her mom, not her sister. But either way, you know, she's still here with the other widows and whatnot. And so we get a really cool action sequence here. Some of the best hand-to-hand choreography that's in the whole series so far. I am up to date, even though I'm a little bit behind on the reviews. I am up to date. I have seen episode 7 this morning, and so from what I can tell, this probably has the best hand-to-hand combat that there was. And you know, it's just Black Widow, you know, fighting all these people, and in the meantime, while Natasha is fighting these guys, we go back to Peggy, and she's now fighting Steve and Steve basically takes the role of the Winter Soldier, except this time, rather than it being like a best friend relationship, like a buddy-buddy relationship, like a brotherly relationship, this is actually more of like a love story, because we know that Peggy was actually in love with Steve. They even almost kissed in this very episode. So this is very much more of like a Romeo and Juliet story, where the two of them are in love, but it's almost like they're destined to fail. The love is not meant to be. And so it really makes it even more emotional, because this is not just two brothers getting in a fight. This is actually, kind of like an actual spousal, almost, this very deep love connection that they both had, with lots of respect as well. Remember, Peggy always respected Steve, and Steve always respected Peggy, and they really had that cool dynamic. And now here Steve is trying to kill Peggy, and it was just really, really hard to watch, and really sad, really, because you really feel for Peggy in this scene, because you know how much she really cares for Steve, and ultimately you even know really how much Steve cares for her by watching our main universe, 616. But of course, this is the What If series. This is a multiversal anime, so technically this is not really 616. So I guess they do a really good job at making you feel that impact. Now, having said that, going back sort of to the hand-to-hand combat with Black Widow, they have some really devastating hits. Like, it's very brutal, it's very violent. There are some very aggressive shots in here, and I would almost say that this episode is probably not even so much suitable for children, at least not young children. I would say probably like you want your children to at least be like pre-teens, 10, 11, 12, before seeing this kind of violence. Because there's some parts of this are even a little bit intimidating, especially when the widows show up and all the assassins. So just keep that in mind if you did want to watch this, with your children. This is a little bit of a darker episode, and this is very much a very aggressive episode. But anyways, more towards the end of the episode, once Natasha, both sides are almost about to lose. Both Peggy and Natasha are almost about to lose, but but Peggy is able to get through to Steve, and he makes the ultimate sacrifice, sort of, which actually really suits his character, because we know Steve always makes a sacrifice, and he ends up taking his suit and going up and destroying this whatever this was, this spaceship thing that the widows arrived in. And so it was just really nice to see him still make that sacrifice, even though he was still very much evil. And then Black Widow ends up doing a cool little move where she shoots I don't even know what it is, this thing at Rogers while he's going up, and ties it around Melena's foot. And then of course this ends up making Melena go up as well, which ultimately ends up making Steve and Melena end up dying, and they end up being killed. But Melena is actually killed, whereas Steve makes a sacrifice to to blow up this, to basically end up saving the world. And that's essentially the main story that happens between the Winter Soldier and the Black Widow movie. Now, in the meantime, after the fight, Widow, or Natasha, and Peggy ends up getting together again. And something really strange happens to Peggy. We end up seeing this vortex, which is actually red. And as soon as I seen the red vortex, the first thing that came to my mind was this is either Doctor Strange or this has to be Wanda, because they're the only two that we've really seen in the entire MCU, whether it's the multiverse or the main 616 universe, that actually has red magic. So the first thing that came to my mind, honestly, was probably Doctor Strange, or maybe something like, maybe even Ultron, because Ultron had the Reality Stone, or something like that. But I really did not expect it to be anyone other than either Wanda, Ultron, or Doctor Strange. And but what was interesting was when she vanishes, the Watcher actually comes up behind Widow. Now I don't think she can actually hear him, but Natasha says, "Where did you go?" type thing, and then the Watcher says that he's not really sure. And then we come back to Peggy, and she finally comes to, and she's really confused, wondering what's going on. And she actually sings out to the Watcher. She's like, "Watcher, Watcher," and of course there's no response. And then of course it is revealed then that we have Wanda, and I'm not even 100% sure who that other character is, but I know that Wanda is there. To me, it puts me in mind of King T'Chaka combined with Nick Fury. So I don't know if they're in this universe, this wacky universe, if there's like a, some kind of Fury and King T'Chaka combination or something. I don't really know who he is or what he is, or if he's some form of maybe Sorcerer Supreme or something. I wasn't able to tell who he is, at least not off the top of my head, but I do obviously know Wanda. Now, the one question that I had about this was, is this actually Wanda, like our 616 Wanda? Because when you look at Multiverse of Madness, they sort of allude to the idea that our Wanda, 616 Wanda, it seems like she's the only Wanda that's actually able to travel the multiverse. And even then, she wasn't really able to do it physically. She was only able to do it mentally, where she took over, her sort of her multiversal counterparts, and almost like she was able to take over their brains. And I'm pretty sure even in the comics, she's the only actual Scarlet Witch. Like, there's many versions of, there's many different versions of the Scarlet Witch, but there's only one actual Scarlet Witch who at least, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there was only one version of Wanda in the comics that was actually Scarlet Witch, and I believe that this is Scarlet Witch, so this could be 616 Wanda, and this could be showing what happened to her at the end of Multiverse of Madness. We know that when the tower and everything collapsed, you were able to see a little glimmer of red light, which we know for sure that Wanda survived. She'll definitely be back, and hopefully even be back for longer than the multiversal saga. So I'm thinking this is probably the real Wanda, but I don't really know. I could be wrong, but I do think that because whether they follow the movie universe or the comics, I think in both versions there's only one actual Scarlet Witch and only one who's actually able to maneuver in between realities. So I do suspect that this is actually our 616 Wanda, but we'll have to wait and see how they play it out and where it goes from there. And there's only a couple episodes left now anyways, so it should be episode 8 and 9. Wanda does not appear in 6 or 7, so I'm thinking she'll either appear in 8 or 9, or maybe even both. But either way, she doesn't appear in 6 or 7. So we'll have to wait and see where that goes. But all in all, I really liked this episode. I thought the animation was great. The story was great. I really loved seeing Black Widow and Carter and their relationship and their dynamic. They really played off of each other really well on screen. Even in the animation, it'd be really cool to see them in live action, which I think we will see in Secret Wars. It'd be really funny to see their characters on screen. They have a really cool back and forth. They're really good friends. They have a really good friendship, almost like Steve and Bucky. And I feel like they would become very much like sisters. They really felt like they were sisters in here. I really liked the story that they did with, definitely with including the widows. I thought that was really smart, having Milena in there. The only thing I wasn't really too keen on was the whole story with Rogers. Not that I didn't like it, but I just felt like they could have. It was a good opportunity to just use someone different, or have a really cool, maybe like a new character or something. But I still really liked the emotional impact it had. So yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I guess if they used another character, it wouldn't have that same impact that it had with Steve. But overall, still a great episode, and one of my favorite episodes. And I still like each of these episodes more and more each time. I still think the first episode was the best, and yeah, episode 1 was still the best for sure, but this was really good all in all. So anyways, that's my review of episode 5 of What If Season 2. Let me know in the comment section below if you liked it. Tell me why or why not. If you like this video, click that subscribe button. And until the next one, take care.